Ladies and gentlemen, this week's episode, I'm joined by somebody I asked to come on the show 4 years ago, and he said, you know what, I will come on it, but just go and find your feet, get used to interviewing people, and then come back and we can have an insightful, valuable conversation to share with everyone. But this guy generally is the content king. I compare him to the modern day Shakespeare. The way he talks about business and content creation, the way he delivers his message, I've never ever seen delivered before. And when I met him 4 years ago, I just sat there and I thought, wow, like this guy is just a book of knowledge. He is the founder of My Friends, Your Friends. He is the CEO of Creative Content Agency, and he's helped some of the biggest brands in the world. Brands like Gary Vaynerchuk, Russell Peters, Tony Robbins, like the list literally goes, Fatman Scoop. I mean, I was checking it earlier on and I was like, oh my God, like this guy is like incredible. So backed up by that, and he's a podcast host, talks about having the best podcast in Dubai. I'll let him have it on this one because, you know, we're all friendly to our guests here. And then he's a DJ promoter. I mean, the list literally goes on. The guy is incredible. And we're going to get to sit down and talk about all the valuable insights. But most importantly, one of the messages that he shares on the 4 Ps, and we're going to come on to that and we're going to talk about that in more detail. But if this is your first episode, thank you very much for joining. I hope you enjoy. And if you're a repeat listener, thanks again for putting your trust in this show and giving me your ears and eyes for the next hour. If you haven't already, head over, subscribe, like, comment, share, because without that, you know, this podcast wouldn't be anything. And just recently, the podcast has got so much love, and I'm just genuinely so thankful because we just want to share a message of inspiration and motivation, and that's it. And without you, wouldn't be able to do it. So please join me in welcoming the one, the only, the legend, Raj Kotecha.
What's up?
How are we?
I'm happy to be here, man. Yeah. Well done. Congratulations on 4 years.
Yeah, man.
North of 70 episodes. I see the grind.
Yeah. It's been a rocky road. I've had times I'm like, oh, do I carry this on? Do I not? And then, you know, I got a message from someone recently, and they were like, basically said like they do what they do because they watch the episodes and stuff. So I was like, wow, can't stop, because it's just there's a great cause to this, and I think my why behind the podcast is I wanted to create this because I wanted to almost have my younger self listening to this, being like, do you know what? Like, it's okay. It doesn't matter what circumstances faces in your life. There's always an opportunity to go on and do something with your life if you put in the hard work and you just keep going. And this podcast is living proof of that. So yeah, and you know, 70th episode. So well, this is the 71st now. So
I love it.
So I love it. So Raj, I tried to explain you as best as I could, but from your eyes, who are you?
I'm a creative entrepreneur. Started off a typical story of a British Indian kid. Dad had a shop, 7 of us living in a 2-bedroom place in Salford, Manchester. Not the friendliest place to grow up as a brown kid, and faced all of the stereotypical challenges that you would do as a minority in a working class town. Eventually went to university because that is one of the common kind of values that you get in our culture is education. Although my road to university wasn't paved with necessarily, you know, pharmacy, you know, go become a doctor, accountant, things of that nature. My parents were super cool. They worked very hard. They both have a creative streak inside them, and they were happy with whatever grades I brought home as long as I was happy and as long as I had done my best.
That's quite a unique thing in Asian families, right? Because it's like kind of like you get beaten out of you to get the good grades, and if you don't get the good grades, you're kind of like disowned, right?
Yeah, and I think, you know, with particularly our types of Asians, like what we call in the UK Asians, what they're now calling globally like South Asians, we had a very unique experience because we're East African Asians, which means that we started off our story like most Indians in India, but we were obviously colonized, and then we went to Africa to another colony by the same colonizer. And then we went to the country of the colonizer. So by the time we got to the UK, the kind of knowledge that was being passed from our grandparents to us had 3 versions of living under British rule. So we got given standard lessons that many people in my generation were given, which is like, listen, if you want to make it in life, you're going to have to work twice as hard because the country's not set up for you to win. So if everybody else is out there batting a 50, you've got to bat 100. If somebody else is out there getting a B, you've got to try and get an A+. So it's like, the bar was generally set higher. And I think that's the reason why you get in our culture like a lot of grit, a lot of like long hours, a lot of determination, Some of the other side benefits would be like collaboration, which you see in like the Jewish communities and the Italian communities and Irish communities. Like there's a lot of like, 45 cousins around a table, everybody helping each other out, everybody trying to grow together. So, I went to university at 18 years old, went from Salford into Manchester City Centre. It was the first year that they were doing fees. You had to pay £1,000 for fees, which was, today it's 9,000, but imagine just going from nothing to 1,000 just felt like a quantum leap. So at that point, started picking up flyers, was obsessed with music because I was listening to it in my dad's shop, wasn't allowed out too much because it wasn't too safe outside. So grew up listening to, Radio 1 hip hop show, Trevor Nelson, Reading the Source, Vibe, Hip Hop Connection. So I knew music inside out, as well as pop music and house and hardcore techno and all that other stuff that was big in the UK at the time and in Manchester. And I realized that if I wanted to continue to go to all these parties now and fulfill on my love for music, I would probably need to participate in the party. So the first party I went to, end of Freshers Week, there was a Nigerian crew, and I said to them, hey, how could I come to this party for free? And they said, can you sell us some tickets? And there was 1,000 kids in my building, started selling tickets, jumped forward a couple of years, managed to navigate the textured environment that is promoting in Manchester in the 90s, because it is a tricky place, and navigated that, started doing my own parties. DJ Luck and MC Neat, a little bit of luck. We had MC Neat at our first party. Monster Boy featuring Denzi, I'm Sorry, all these big records we launched in our parties. And then NASDAQ crashed. I was studying business and IT with management.
This is 2008, yeah?
So NASDAQ crashed in 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the big dot-com burst is what people know it as, the dot-com bubble burst.
Showing my age now.
Yeah.
I remember the 2008 crash, but not the 2000.
Well, this is my third one. Imagine, we'll talk about that. So then, as the UK tech market kind of went under, I moved to Canada, started... I was involved in the incubating of an organization there that sold ringtones, because ringtones was very big. Maybe you remember like Crazy Frog.
Yeah.
That became a multi-billion-dollar industry almost overnight. And then came back to the UK once my visa ran out, still working in mobile tech, helping non-smartphones, because the iPhone wasn't out there, deliver ringtones and movie clips to phones. The iPhone came out. I was working for a publisher in Los Angeles. That got sold to The Guardian for millions of dollars. I had a small slice of that. So that allowed me to think freely without debt. And I went all in on the creative content agency. And around that kind of like early mid 2000s, when I got back to the UK, I went back to London, because going back to Manchester after Toronto was not like the right move.
Yeah.
It felt like a step backwards. So my cousin Vic picked me up. I felt like London was paved with gold. We started Love Soul DJs. We started working with Russell Peters, who I built a relationship with in Canada through Cardinal Official, and started doing after parties. And then 3 years in, we did my birthday party at the Gherkin building. 600 people, 600 people. It's just a vibe, man. New Year's Eve there, built a nice big community of people that love music. All those people ask you, what else do you do? Obviously, I'd been involved in this exit in LA, so I was able to tell people, if you want to work with our agency, you can do. Got laughed out of the room by KPMG, Deloitte, Accenture, and all these other people, but the e-commerce community in 09, 10, 11, 12 had an unlimited appetite for content.
What year was this that you got laughed out of the room from KPMG?
07, 08, 09. Yeah.
And they just weren't buying the whole content.
KPMG was putting out papers. I think it was KPMG or Deloitte. I'm pretty sure it was KPMG. We're putting out papers about Twitter, the emergence of Twitter. And they didn't know how to promote the PDF on Twitter. And so I said to them, this is how you promote it on Twitter, and this is how you build your partners' brands on LinkedIn. And they said, we don't want to promote the partners of our accounting firm on LinkedIn, because if we promote who they are and pump them too much, KPMG or Accenture will try to snatch them. Wow. Or Ernst & Young will try to snatch them. And I was like, well, that doesn't necessarily make sense, because what does their day-to-day job look like? And they go to the office, they look over the business, they go out for lunch, they entertain potential clients. Those clients sign with the agency. That work is done by somebody below them. And then they rinse and repeat every day, lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner. So I was like, they're playing a profile game. They're playing a game of know, like, and trust. And social media, although it was still emerging in 08, 09, is going to be a massive way to scale that. So I got laughed out of these rooms, but then some miraculous stuff happened. The iPhone came out. The Facebook movie came out. Me and Gary V connected. And then all of a sudden, all of these kind of like worlds started to connect. And now the people that laughed me out of the room were seeing, Jeremy Paxman on Newsnight saying, use this hashtag if you want to get involved in our conversation. And now they start ringing back being like, oh, you're that social media guy. Can we start working with you? But by then I'd built so much money and I built so much momentum in the e-commerce space that I was kind of committed to that.
Yeah. So that was a real kind of like quick like overview. Now you obviously you mentioned about growing up in Manchester.
Yeah.
Now I was reading you guys used to live in a 2-bedroom flat, but there was like what 7 of you
Yeah.
in the apartment. What you say your mum and dad were both like creative people, worked really hard. What were your kind of like childhood memories?
They were fun. I think anybody who is growing up that way doesn't necessarily know what they don't know.
Yeah.
So if you're told to stay in, you can't make a compelling case as to why you should go out. You're just not allowed out, right? It's not as if you're going to walk out the front door. And I could never sneak out because the front door was the shop. We had no front door to our house. Our living room where we ate food was behind the stock room. You walk through the stock room behind the counter. In front of the counter, you walk through the aisles, and then that's the front door of the shop. So there's no sneaking out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just have like fond memories of like being in the shop. I mean, it was hard compared to today's standards, but I got a lot of one-on-one time living under the same roof as my grandma and my granddad, my dad, my mom, my uncle, my dad's younger brother, my little sister, saw her grow up. So, I mean, I'd say from that perspective, it was good. And also like unlimited content, right?
Yeah.
Unlimited magazines. My dad was also able to get us like a satellite like connection, which was kind of difficult to get in the early 90s. It wasn't even digital TV in those times. So I consumed a lot of content. And I remember that being like a nice memory. And of course, tons of food. And I'm very fortunate, thank God, I still have both my parents, so I can still go home and eat those dishes in the UK, you know? A lot of love, man.
Yeah. No, it's I think that's one thing, isn't it? Because I come from a working class family, and a lot of the time we was alone because my parents were always working. But then you had the privilege of being able to have them working, but kind of be with them as well. And I suppose as well, did it expose you to kind of meeting new people as well? Because you're always in the shop meeting regulars and making friends and stuff. Do you think that kind of like had a connection to why you're such a sociable person today?
Yeah, it's like HIIT training, but for your personality, right? It's like every 23 seconds.
I told you at the beginning, I was like, the guy, the way he delivers stuff is just second to none.
Yeah.
Training for your personality. I love it.
Every 23 seconds or 42 seconds, somebody's coming in the shop and you're like, all right, John, you put your hand behind your back. You know that they want 20 Lambert and Butler. You put it on the table. You know they're going to want some milk. Yeah. You write it down in a tick. They don't pay cash because they're working class people. They only pay on Fridays when they get their little brown envelope with their salary in. And yeah, you're constantly talking to different people. And then once I got to a certain age where I could carry, 24 cans of Coke or 48 cans of Coke, you start doing trips to the cash and carry, bringing the stock back to the house. Because we didn't have a big shop and we didn't have big storage. So if you don't have a lot of storage, you don't get amazing economies of scale, which means you've got to constantly run back and forth to the cash and carry to buy stock. So yeah, for sure. And I would say that without a doubt, like that made me comfortable with connecting with people at scale and people from different backgrounds.
Yeah. Have you ever worked for anyone?
Yeah, I've had a couple of jobs. I worked for Dixon's when I was at university.
So exposed to technology again?
Yeah, I mean, the Dixon story was crazy because Vic, who many people know is my cousin, who's my partner in the creative content agency and all of our brands, when I used to go down to London to hang out with him, they used to have him and his brothers used to have mobile phones. And I remember, I think it might have been Vic or his brother put a Motorola Graphite phone in my hand around 95, 96. And I was like, yo, this is going to change the game. So I became obsessed with reading not only about hip hop and music and all that kind of other stuff, but like the tech magazines like I can't remember what it's called, Which Magazine and T9, I think it was called like that. So I remember one time I was in, I think it was either the Arndale Center or the Trafford Center. And I was looking at phones and the general manager came out. I had no idea who he was. And he was like Imran or Ahmed or something. I don't know what it was, like just general confusion, wrong brown guy moment, which happens, right? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, you want to come in? And I was like, sure. I'm like, this guy's walking me into the stock room of Dixon's. I'm like, this is going to be a real kid in the candy store moment. We sit down, we start talking about mobile phones. He was like, yeah, listen, I think you'd be ideal for this job. I was like, great. I'm not here for a job. But I'm answering all the questions, loving the vibe, the back and forth, right? And I realized, hang on a second, there could be some money in this. Like, he's actually interviewing here. I was like, listen, but this is not me. This is not what I'm here for. I was just literally looking at phones. They were like, well, if you're keen, you know phones inside out. And I knew them inside out because my cousins had phones. So they had phones. I mean, this was radical stuff in the mid-90s. You could buy a phone, pay £200 for the year and get unlimited calls from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and all weekend. So I got really, really well exposed
the good
to
old
that
days when things actually used to last. Now they're just gone.
They're gone. And in those days, even those days, 17, 18, 19, 20, I was there's a meme on the internet right now, right? Fuck around and find out. Like, but I was like a yes guy, which was like, if somebody even hinted like they had an opportunity for me that would get me out of my environment where I was from, I would just say yeah. Like, there's no downside to somebody saying, do you want to pop into the back? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, if that's where your offices are, like, I want to see what's going on.
Yeah, no, I love that you just said that, because it's one thing that I kind of like harp on all the time. Is I just, with my journey, I just said yes to everything. And even if I was like, it couldn't be like, maybe like if I looked at it and was like, oh, I don't really want to do it, but it could be an opportunity, that I'd still do it, because I just didn't know who I was going to meet on the other side. And sometimes I'd walk away and be like, okay, it wasn't really worth it, but what have I lost? A bit of time. But half the time I've met people that just changed my life forever. Do you know what I mean? And we'll always have that connection.
Yeah.
So saying yes to everything is like the most important part, I would say, of just life in general.
Well, life is your partner in life. Like, if you don't start saying yes to stuff, then you can't leave certain stuff up to the universe. If you're not prepared to leave certain stuff to the universe, that means you've got it all figured out, which means that you're smarter than the universe.
Which is not the case.
Which is not the case. So you just got to sometimes let go of the steering wheel and just see where it goes. And the way that you let go is by saying yes and having faith that that's going to lead to something positive. And here's the reality for anybody who wants to kind of like experiment with this way of life, is that it will go wrong sometimes. And it's at that point that you get back up and try again.
Yeah.
But you can't constantly overplan everything. Like, I'm going to be here at this time, I'm going to move my career here, or I'm going to meet this person, I'm going to move to this country. Like, you can try, but without those leaps of faith, the whole upside of what's available to you in your life is just not going to happen, because you constrained it. You got to like let the ropes go a little bit and see where your life goes with it.
Yeah. So you worked for Dixon's how long?
Man, that's probably like 99 till 2002.
And then you found the kind of nightlife promotion game, and that was it.
Bro, you know, it's crazy. This is a hard one to understand. And it's hard to understand because I don't do a great job of explaining it. The best version I can offer is that I ran two lives at the same time. I ran the academic, part-time job life, and then I ran like the promoter streets life. Do you know what I mean? So, and if we just go to 98, say for example, 98 to 2001, I do my undergrad in business and IT with management. Then I go and do a year in industry working for what is now the Fragrance Shop, which has 220 stores. The CEO has an MBE or an OBE. Then I go and do my postgrad, which is MSc in technology management with a focus on acquisition and strategy. Then I go to Canada for a year and a half, come back to London, get a job working in the movie industry, helping people with their mobile clips, go to LA, start working there for this publisher that was equivalent of the Financial Times, but for tech. We get bought by The Guardian. I go all in creative content agency, and then the story that I told you before. Let's go back to 98 and look at the parallel life that I had at the same time. 1998, I get handed some tickets. I start selling tickets for all different nightlife promoters. I eventually negotiate the streets and start doing my own parties where I can actually go out and make my own money from doing gigs and hiring artists without something bad happening to me. Do that successfully, negotiate that until 2003. 2003, can't get a job because the market's crashed, go to Canada. I take my music industry contacts and I go to Canada. That's where I meet Cardinal Official and Russell Peters.
Did you put a night sun in Canada as well? When you first went?
Yeah. I had nights in Toronto. You know, Ashley Walters from Top Boy, he would come like, just, there was people around, like good people around. Director X, who's like Drake's music video producer. Like, I met all these people that were already super established artists, but, you know, relative to where they are today, you know, probably about halfway into their career. And then came back to London, started doing parties, Russell Peters after party, meet Gary V, mad DJ sets, DJed for the Mobile Awards, did some television, did some radio, went to Los Angeles, was on a couple of radio stations, did some media out there. Eventually in those times met Mams Taylor, who now runs Misfits Boxing with KSI. Like, it all kind of like ties in. And then that'll take you to about 2010, 2012. And again, then all in on creative content agency. But then at 2013, Vayner World 1. You know what I mean? Launched Jab, 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 Right Hook. 2016, launched Vayner World 2, the Ask Gary V show, the first overseas Ask Gary V show live in front of a live studio audience.
You was behind all that?
That's all us. Yeah, that's me and my crew. Like me, Vic, Sujin, Rishi, a couple of other dudes. Like, yeah, from scratch. Like from buying the URL, coming up with the name, everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously, so Canada seems like a bit of a pinnacle moment for you. So going to Toronto and being that just there in general and making network, would you say that Toronto was the point that changed everything for you?
Yeah, I'm going there in a couple of weeks. I wouldn't say it was the point that changed everything for me. I'd say that Manchester changed everything for me, because in Manchester you got to see the people living their real lives were what you heard in rap songs. You saw the nice cars, you saw the parties, you saw the music. So I would say Manchester was probably like the most transformative, because then you can see hip hop culture living out like in front of you. Canada was amazing because it moved me closer to like North American culture, and because of the magazines I was reading and the TV shows I was watching, to be closer to hip hop in North America was like really super cool. My original first trip to North America was in 1999 at the end of my first year of university. Spent some time in Chicago, New York, Toronto, my first trip there. And that's when I kind of like fell in love with it. And I was like, hang on a second, if the UK market is down, why not just give Toronto a try? I was able to read in the papers that the market there is still going up in tech. And in those days, you won't believe me, Danny, but there was a time where the US market tech-wise, when it comes to consumer tech, was behind the UK. The UK and Europe, because of Nokia and so on, and Ericsson used to have the best phones, and America would be like, man, we never get those phones. And if they did, it would be a year and a half behind. They've managed to turn the tables in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of an arbitrage there where if you knew about mobile phone technology the way that I did, I actually was able to go there, start selling mobile phones, and then as a result of winning a sales competition, got some time with the CEO. That was my incentive, is that if I win, I get 5 minutes. Got 5 minutes with him, pitched him all this stuff that I knew about ringtones, and he said, okay, we'll build that business inside our organization. And they already had distribution at 72 student unions across the country, East Coast to West Coast. So we had that platform to sell on.
How did you find out about the ringtones though? How did you learn about how to create them? Because like nowadays it's like, okay, there's all this technology around us which can create so many different things. I mean, we'll come on to the podcasting as well, because you was beating the drum about podcasts before these beautiful studios exist and cameras like this and so on and microphones. But like, how did you get to that point of learning about ringtones and seeing that was a trend?
So the first thing, when you first go to explore a new vertical, typically what happens is technology providers will provide you with a white label solution. So they've got all the technology inside their mystery box, and they just say, if you've got distribution, as we did across the whole of Canada, you can put your label on it and then we'll do the servicing of it. But typically what happens is you don't make as much profit margin. So my boss at the time was like, go find out how we can make more money. Find out the components that live inside this magical box that these software companies have. So he paid for me to go to New Orleans to a music conference, to Miami to a music conference, where I met DJ Khaled and Fat Joe, story for another day. And that's when you start asking people like, okay, if there's $1 being made, what's the breakdown? Because we're being told at the moment that we can get like 15 cents on the dollar as a commission for every sale. How can we make more? And they say, well, the network, the wireless carrier makes this much, the record label makes this much, that then gets split down to the artist and so on and so forth. But if you, as the distributor of the ringtone, take on more responsibility for the sale and the fulfillment, you can make more margin. So literally sat in meetings with like old white guys, like old technology guys, because in those days, there was no like guys like you, like cool guys, T-shirts, Zuckerbergs, there was none of that. The whole industry was run by old tech, like the old IBMs of the world and Sprint, Verizon, the old record labels. So you sit in meetings and you just have people explain it to you. And funnily enough, one of the places where I learned about all this stuff was a website called Moco News. And Moco News was owned by a company called Content Next. And that's the company that I eventually ended up working for in LA that then got sold to The Guardian. So that business started 21 years ago last week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because I saw on your LinkedIn it says that you did kind of like sales and marketing director for The Guardian for 6 months, was it?
Yeah, that was the 6 months that they bought us. So when you get bought, they kind of want you to stay inside the organization for a vesting period. So I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
I was going to say, how was it? Yeah.
Nah, it was whack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just wasn't. It wasn't my culture. Like it was like
it's very. It's almost like it's an old-fashioned business, right? It's already set up. It doesn't like new ways. Doesn't like new ideas, technology.
Yeah, I felt like I never said this before on camera, but like I felt like joining the Guardian at that time. It was a bit of like a boys' culture because obviously I was in sales and commercials, so it was all about like pints at lunchtime and incentives and commissions and a little bit of, I felt like there's a little bit of like backstabby kind of stuff going on there. And what was great is that the internet was coming along and there was news sites like the one that they bought, the one that I was working for in LA, that were disrupting the whole industry. They were not having to worry about print and print factories and advertising. They were just putting banners up on their site that were sponsored. So the internet was starting to give away for free what they'd been charging £1 or £2 a day for. Like imagine if someone said to you right now, I'm going to give you information for £1 to £2 a day, and I'm not going to beam it to your pocket. I'm going to have you walk down to the store and buy it on paper and carry it around with you all day and get through it as you can. Like that's the world we lived in. And so what I kind of like the fact that like the digital world came and just like thunderslapped that industry. But what I am super grateful for, and I'm grateful for this, the same way that I'm grateful that I came up in the music industry when we had vinyl and print flyers, is that I got to see how the old boys sell. And the sales manager at the time, there was a guy there called Matt Weiss, and he became, I'll tell you his story in a second, but I remember he once heard me pitching the digital assets that we were selling from this company they just purchased of ours, right? And he said, listen, I know you've just joined the company and I know you don't technically like work under my team, but I've got some feedback for you. I said, yeah, what is it? He goes, you offer too much when you sell. He goes, if I threw one beach ball at you, would you be able to catch it? I said, yeah. He goes, what if I threw 2 beach balls? How many would you be able to catch? I said, I don't know, 1, not both. He was like, yeah, that's it. He goes, just throw one thing at a time. So there is things that these old boys kind of knew that was super duper valuable. And so I would say it was all worth it to connect with guys like him and learn from like real like sales OGs and other people that were around him, many of who I still mimic today when I'm in an environment where I want to try and get a deal done. So I'm super grateful for that. And what's crazy is that same guy, Matt Weiss, is a managing director of a company called The Bench. And The Bench does the Arabian Hotel Investment Conference, the Africa Hotel Investment Forum, the Global Restaurant Investment Forum, all these kind of like big things where country leaders and CEOs of like Marriott and Starwood and Hilton all come together with like kings and princes and prime ministers. And when I first moved to Dubai and I was just trying to figure my way out here, he rang me and said, I'm doing this conference. Will you come and look at it for me? Because I know you like content.
Wow.
And I ended up doing 3 years with them and flying around the world and shooting the heads of countries, ministers. So imagine I've come from this hip hop background where I'm interviewing the RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan, and you slice me out and you put my client in, and you slice the RZA out and you put in like the Minister of Tourism for Egypt, and I'm making the same content in the corporate world as I was making in the hip hop world, but I'm making like 7 times the amount of money. In fact, in real terms, you don't make much money in hip hop. Anybody who works in the industry will tell you that. So realistically, I was probably making 2,000 times the amount of money. Because when you make hip hop content, you've then got to be able to sell something, like you got to go out and DJ or, you know, leverage your profile. Whereas in the corporate world, you don't need to do that. You can be a ghost producer, tell your client what they need to say, when they need to say it, how they need to say it.
But they're paying you to do it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from kind of like putting on parties in Toronto and obviously going into the tech world, how did that set up working with some of the kind of like the bigger names? As you said, Gary Vaynerchuk now. Like everyone associates with Gary Vaynerchuk with being like this like mastermind about like everything that's content, right? But obviously there's somebody behind him creating that content. So were you that person that was just literally creating brainstorms for him to just go out and regurgitate to the audience?
No, man, my life was much easier than that. We gave him this concept of Vayner World, and he was like, I love it. This is how many books you need to commit to, because he's looking for that kind of promotion and distribution on the ground. The number was crazy. We had to pay for it. I was like, I don't know, Gary. I don't know if we can like shift that many books in 2013. He was like, I think his closing line before he hung up, because his whole team was on the phone, was, I know you can. I trust you. I love you. I'll talk to you soon. And that was it. And I was like, well, I guess the deal's done and we're committed. And if he'd not raised the bar that high, then we'd have probably not even like learned to promote that event the way that we did, which then gave us the opportunity to do the second event. But
How
listen,
much did you have to sell?
do you remember? Vic's in the room for those who are listening on the pod, but it was a lot. I mean, it was more 4 figures, more than 1,000 books. Yeah, I mean, and then you're buying them at wholesale. So you're talking about wrapping up like 8, 10, 12,000 pounds sterling in like book sales. And imagine, I'll take that all day long versus the number that you got to pay for Gary now, which I'll tell you after the mics. But like, you know, you're paying premium to have him come and speak now, rightly so, because he can. So I've seen him simultaneously deliver value to like 15,000 people at the same time. So if you adjust how much you pay him for the amount of people that are benefiting in the room and feeling that energy, it's super worth it for a conference. So no, we weren't that. But I will say this, Gary was the mastermind of his own career, because other than a dude in the back of his wine shop with a tape camera, the rest of the content and the metaphors and the analogies and everything, the way that he spoke and the format of that show was all him. to me, I've never said this again. I've been saving some of this stuff for you, bro, because I was like, I need the kind of, not that I'm saving these actual lines, but I just know that you're the kind of dude that will kind of like put me in the zone to answer it like this. Gary V's a prophet. Like, he's a modern day prophet. He gives you an operating system for life that will benefit you, that doesn't benefit him at all, other than knowing that he's making the world a better place. He gives you that perspective. He gives you the tools and the philosophies like kindness, empathy, gratitude, how to live your life in a way that benefits you and puts money in your pocket and brings you joy. He is that, I wouldn't say like, I would say that there are parallels between like a spiritual leader and what he does. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's a nicer, have you met him?
Never.
He's a nicer dude in real life than he is on the internet.
Yeah, you watch some of his videos and he just sits down with people that just come down and he'll just meet them and he'll just talk to them for an hour about their business. And that's very selfless for somebody of his kind of like stature.
Yeah. There's so many stories. I don't want to cut you off, but even just because you say that, because I was with him a few weeks ago, Vic and I were with him a few weeks ago. And even then, at the top of his game, he did, in front of us, he did an act of kindness for a young lady that happened to be in our vicinity. That was just like, yo, man, like, that's real. That he's playing such a long game.
What did he do?
I'll tell you after the cameras.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like, it's the kind of stuff where, you know, even Vic and I were also involved in the kind of like, quote unquote, paying into that moment. And we were like, damn. But then we were like, nah, what he just did there is like, the way he thinks about kindness is like generations ahead. Do you know what I mean? It's different than someone just quote unquote being a nice guy and giving a tip to your waiter, or it's a whole universe level different.
When you was able to sell your portion of the business to the Guardian, how old were you?
20. That deal went through in July 08, and Lehman Brothers happened October 08, so I was 28. Yeah, 28.
And how much did you make?
A good amount, but like not enough to like buy a house.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I was like, I think I was employee number 6 over there. The way I found out about the sale, I wasn't involved in like tying it all together. I was the European Director of Business Development. So I got a phone call when I'm living in a converted living room in London near Vic's house saying, hey, listen, you're going to find out in the morning that the company is being sold and we need your share options. And I'm like, or stock options. I'm like, what are stock options? They were like, look on this page of your contract. When you joined, we gave you stock options in the startup. So I'm scrambling through, you know, in my room, by the way, I've got vinyl, speakers, headphones, the mirror that you get ready in, a whiteboard. Like, it was just a mess. And
Women.
it was half the, not in those days. But like the room was half the size of the studio we're in. If you're watching this on video, about as much as you can see in the wide angle is about as much as my bedroom was. And yeah, sure enough, there it was. And then we had to send a fax. So I had to like scan it and then send it over via an internet fax service to LA. And then the next morning the news broke. And then a few days later, the number got sent to me and it got paid in 2 chunks. And that's it. And I went to Australia, had a bit of downtime. It was the first time, you know, imagine that was almost like the 10-year anniversary of hustling for me. Started in September 08. This is now like Q4. I started in September 98. This is now Q4 08. So this is a 10-year hardcore run.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a nice bit of relief, man. And it was at that point that I realized that everything I've done, whether it's throwing parties, whether it's working in the corporate world or working in this startup, along the way, I loved making content.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even Love Soul TV started as a result of working
I watched
for
some
this
of the
company.
adverts today. I watched some of the adverts.
Yeah.
And you're showing like how you're on the green screen, but then how it shows in real life.
Yeah. That shit would still fly today, bro.
Yeah.
Like that was 1 minute of content. It was called one take Raj Kotecha in a minute or something like that, yeah?
But like what I'm fascinated about is like how you're always able to see the trends, because you had it with the mobile phones, you had it with the podcasts, you had it with the content strategies. Like as you're doing there, like in that video that we spoke about, is it's all like behind the scenes on how to create that content. So like like nowadays, behind the scenes is like huge a part of content creation. How are you able to keep staying ahead of the curve?
I think everybody just has a different gift. My ability is to hold on to tons of useless information, and at some point, if it all slow cooks, it synthesizes in my brain to a concept. So the concept you're talking about, that's called One Take Kotecha, was speak on green screen and make the majority of the screen the green screen. But in the corner, the picture in picture is the final rendered version of what it would look like.
Yeah.
So I just thought that'd be like some cool shit to watch. I know I would watch it as somebody who was becoming obsessed with content.
Yeah.
So I think it's just having a sense of like, what would educate people, or what would entertain them, or what would inform them of something that's valuable to them. And I think that sense, bro, this is like one of those weird therapy sessions, but I think that sense comes from being in the shop.
Yeah.
Because anybody who's ever worked in a shop, especially the shops in the 80s and 90s, right, had a sense of anticipation. So it's like, oh, here's Lynette. She's going to want a 20p mix. So for anybody who doesn't know, a 20p mix is you take 20 pence worth of sweets, you put it in a plastic bag, you seal it, and it's pre-ready for 20 pence. Or in comes, Gareth, and he's going to want 20 Benson and Hedges. As you see Gareth open the door, you know where the cigarettes are behind you. You grab them. This person's going to want a bottle of Jack Daniels. Or this person told me she was coming in today. It's a Thursday. It's the Thursday before Mother's Day. I know she gets paid on a Wednesday. Today she's going to be coming in for the Mother's Day card. Today would be a good day to let her know that you can get a box of roses as well, like a box of chocolates. So I think it's just that kind of like playing it out. Even today when I go to book a venue for my friends, your friends, my process is walking into a room and filling it with the ghosts of attendees past. Like I'll walk in there and I can imagine my community, because our events are anywhere between 200 and 500 people now, right? The community is 4,000 people. And I can walk in there and I can imagine people that come to the party and how they're hanging out on the bar, and I can feel it. I can it's almost like augmented reality. I can layer them in to the space that I'm in. And that helps me make the decision of should we move forward with that venue or not. So it's kind of like being able to like predict a little bit in the future. And then there's still hardcore feasibility that goes into that. I've got to look at the numbers and does it make sense? Calendar scheduling, co-host, get Vic to buy in. There's a lot of shit that needs to be done.
Yeah.
But that's my gift.
So that you've been doing that for what, 14 years now?
That was registered in 2006. It was registered as Love Soul Limited because Vic and I did the original deal to do some marketing work for a Russell Peters tour that was coming up. And we needed somewhere to put the check. So we had to set up a company so we could get a bank account, so we could put the check inside the bank account.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years in, especially as I started to sell more to businesses, they were like, you're called the creative content agency, or you're like starting to like dabble with these kind of names for your business, but your invoices are coming from Love Soul Limited. So one client told me straight up and down, you should change the name of the company. And it was, once the company sold to The Guardian and a few other bits and pieces, things started to like galvanize. I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to go all in on that. And then 2 years later, I turned 30. We threw a huge birthday party for my 30th birthday. It was like 500-600 people, Brazilian dancers, indoor fireworks, the whole thing. This was in 2010. I remember saying to Vic at that time, I was like, it's time to move away from like DJ Raj Love Soul, which was how I was known as part of the duo with him, and time to start pushing the Raj Kotecha brand. Plus, at that time, DJs were becoming rock stars. So you start to see people like, David Guetta and Calvin Harris and Mark Ronson and all these kind of dudes were making records and becoming pop stars in their own right. So I was like, just playing records isn't enough. So we're either going to go down the route of making our own records and trying to make it in the music industry, or we're going to flip it into something else. And from my point of view, whilst I do love hip hop culture more than anything, I love the music, etc., I still have a responsibility and obligation to myself and to my family and the people that I work with to generate revenue. And it would be a bigger waste of my gift in the corporate world to not leverage that. And so I was like, we're going to redirect our energy there. And what's beautiful about now, 2023 and onwards, is that my friends in the hip hop community, of which some of the highest of the high, love the conversations that we're able to have about what's going on in the corporate world. And then some of my friends in the corporate world, many of which are the highest of the high, love the conversations that we're able to have about what's going on in culture.
Well, a lot of them now are businessmen, aren't they? They're not just hip hop artists. A lot of them invest in their own businesses, right?
Yeah.
And they're kind of like self-employed, right? So being able to sit in a room with you and kind of like talk business where you understand it, but you've also got that same kind of hip hop vibe as well.
Yeah.
It adds a lot of value to the equation.
Yeah, the younger guys are up and coming entrepreneurs and self-employed and things of that nature. But, if you start looking at Jay-Z and people like that, it's crazy. And I think this is the way that just culture set up and the media set up and the general bias towards black people in Western media. Jay-Z is a unicorn CEO.
Yeah.
Drake, although he won't say it, has at least a $1 billion portfolio. Because if you look at the multiple of revenue that he's going to do touring for the next 5 years, the multiple of revenue that he does on merch, the multiple of revenue that he does on his licensing and how much Spotify plays he gets. And God knows where else this man is making money. If you just did a less than 2x multiple, you're now talking about a billionaire at least once.
Yeah.
So we look at people like, you know, the Jack Dorseys and all these people that come out of Silicon Valley that start things in their garage and go to Stanford University as like unicorn CEOs. These hip hop cats are unicorn CEOs. And these are the ones, and I still think on the flip side, to be critical of them, is that they're also not in a position yet where they can be open about how well they're doing, because the rest of the culture is still trying to catch up, and they deal with different things when it comes to jealousy and animosity and things of that
It's
nature.
very true what you say, though, isn't it? It's like if you don't fit the profile of CEO, be a like billionaire CEO, it's just like you just don't get that recognition for it. But when you think about it, it's like whenever they talk about it, it's always, you know, Amazon, Apple, it's Facebook, like all white profile people.
Yeah.
When you've got people in the background that are probably doing just as good as them, but in a different industry, but look different, speak different, are different.
Yeah.
And they just don't even give them the time of day.
Yeah. And it's weird because, you know, there's only a couple of pockets of people now that are still pushing the racism agenda, right? There's certain old people that will eventually die in the media industry that have an agenda to get people to go against each other. Then there's less fortunate, less educated people that believe that we're not all equal. But in the middle, like if you look at how we live here in Dubai, and if you go to like, I'll be in New York, I'll be in London next week, New York the week after, the people I'll be hanging out with are from all different backgrounds. And because they're self-assured, they're like self-aware, they've got some momentum in their career, the last thing they think about is the race of the people that they hang out with and do business with.
Yeah.
Because they've almost gone beyond that. Do you know what I mean? Now, that doesn't mean that in certain Gulf country clubs or certain banks or, you know, you're still not going to get that. You're going to get pockets because unfortunately humans aren't all perfect from that perspective.
And also as well, that you know, you think about, I was thinking about this today because I was thinking about creating some content around how you just content about being nice to people. But then
what made you want to do that? I'm interested because I'm going through the same thing in my head right now.
Because the thing is, from my side, I've done, as we spoke about earlier on, I've done 70 episodes now. And I speak every week to different people, but I've never shown what I've learned. And one of the things I was thinking about is how to be kind. Like one of these things is the podcast has taught me a lot of emotional intelligence, because a lot of the people I've spoken to have all pretty much had some sort of trauma in their life. Like obviously I released a podcast today with Natasha, and you know, her story is like, wow, it blew my mind. And it just made me realize that like everyone is facing a struggle one way or another.
Yeah.
You know, and it may be serious trauma, it may be minor trauma. They may have just had an argument with their partner, whatever it may be, but you don't know that because you just have to just be nice to people. And then I was thinking about like, you know, why are we not nice to people? And some of the reasons why we're not nice to people would be because they have different opinions to us. But then when I was thinking about the opinions, people get fed differently the information. They speak to their mum, they speak to their friend, they will read an ad on Facebook, they look at Twitter, they read a YouTube channel, like, and it's all different contexts of news, but it's all different opinions. But ultimately, everyone's entitled to their own opinions, but there's somebody out there that's driving this agenda to create a divide. So I went into like a really weird kind of like, it was like a rabbit hole of like thoughts. But it all went back to kind of being kind. And the reason why you should be kind is because somewhere somebody is trying to create a divide between us. But if we fight against that by being kind to each other, then there will be no divide.
Yeah, I think that is the single biggest arbitrage in user-generated media like the kinds that we create in the world right now is pumping kindness and empathy and just generally being a good girl or guy. And no matter what, unless there's a gun to your head, making sure that you push that glass half full agenda. Like I was in London a couple of weeks ago. And everyone was...
So let me change that analogy for you, because I did another podcast with someone. He goes, why does it have to be half full for? Why can't it be your glass is overflowing?
Which is nice and idealistic, but some people just don't live like that.
Yeah.
Like some people are really, 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 really stressed out. So like, it's nice, that'll get you the clip, and I'm not like dissing whoever said this, but like, you know, that's not everyone's reality. Sometimes half full is the baseline. this is some real talk, right? I know somebody a couple of days ago, maybe less than a couple of days ago, that was told 2 weeks ago, you're about to die. And you got a couple of days, it's about to happen anytime. And we're going to operate on you. And there's a 80% chance you're going to die in the operating theater. And thankfully, the dude made it. So amazing. I know another dude, good friend of mine. Everything's going super well. He's a brilliant person, kind, super dude. Kid got murdered. Like, so we can't then be like, well, why isn't your glass overflowing?
Yeah,
it's like, that's cool and all, but like the thing about having that real, like I've really got diverse friends, you know what I mean? Like, and some of them are really going through it and holding on with whatever last thread of emotion and energy they've got to hold on and keep life going. And there are other people that are just like, man, I just can't stop winning the lottery. So you can't, it all happens in the nuances. Do you know what I mean? Nothing happens in absolute terms. That's why I'm saying, as a baseline, when worst gets to worst, try and look at the glass as half full. Yeah. Try and strip whatever positive perspective you can get from something. And if shit's going super well, yeah, let that glass overflow and let people know, because some people vibe off that. You know what I mean?
Very true.
But it all exists on a spectrum. To be good critical thinkers, we have to line up every scenario, look at one extreme on one end, look at the other extreme on the other end, look at the median in the middle, look at the different actors, what are their different agendas and incentives, and say, okay, on balance, how do I look at this? Rather than just try and get that viral clip. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
Because that'll make you feel good for a second and give you a little dopamine burst. Like, yeah, the life is good. Everything's flowing. I'm speaking from my soul. I'm doing this. Man, but the streets are fucking real. Like, people got real shit going on. Do you know what I mean? Like, businesses, oh, fuck, you know, my business license is coming up. I got to do this, but I was planning on going to Greece. Now I can't go to that. If I don't go, then they're going to think I don't care about their wedding. You know what I mean? Like, when you really switched on to every single AMF and every type of frequency that's going on, you have to be like a little bit more realistic. My opinion. Long answer for a short question.
Yeah, no, I get that. But from talking about those pain points, then, so the creative content agency. So talking about tough times. I mean, we're all talking about how things are going and it's going great in this. But have you ever faced any tough times with your?
Yeah, 2020 was a slap to the jaw, bro. Like, you know, revenue was down 85%. It was me and Vic. We were a team of 7 prior to COVID. People had to obviously go home and do what they had to do, and that's fine. So it was just me and Vic, just like it was in 2005 when he came to pick me up from the airport when I came back from Canada with my luggage. We're stripped right back to the nuts and bolts of the business. We cannot go on location and shoot with our cameras and our microphones and do all that cool, sexy stuff that Tony Robbins, Stephen Bartlett, all that stuff that people see on our social media, right? It's just gone. So what do we start doing? We start saying to ourselves, okay, if we can transmit nothing else, if we can't be in a room and transmit what we know to somebody and get them to shoot and be their ghost producers, maybe we can start looking at what good has happened or is happening. One of the things that happened here in the UAE is a bunch of voice and video apps became available, namely Zoom, Google Hangout, and Microsoft Teams and Skype. So we're like, okay, let's start teaching on there.
Wasn't it Clubhouse as well, though?
Clubhouse started popping off temporarily, but that wouldn't be a great teaching platform. That was only a great teaching platform for us because I was being asked to speak on a lot of these Clubhouse panels. Yeah. So I could just go and give my 2 cents like you and I are going to do next week, right? But I was like, okay, who do we know that's going through it? And let's say to them, hey, if you want to learn the 4 P's of content, which we've been teaching for years and years and years and charging top dollar for, we're now going to start giving away these programs free of charge. If it teaches you something that gets you through COVID, whether it gets you through as a distraction or it allows you to rejuggle your business, that's a great thing. But right now, we can't even book a boardroom to charge for it. So we may as well just give it away. So it's about finding ways of giving value. And sure enough, thanks to my reputation and thanks to, you know, my hard work, Vic's hard work, our commitment, the network that we've built over the last 25 years, as soon as the market then started to open up again, we were able to get a lot of that revenue back. But, and this is keeping it super real with you because you're my guy and I've been saving it for this. We managed to get up to 85% of the revenue we had pre-COVID in a reasonable period of time. But we only had 2 people on payroll instead of 7. So in many ways,
you were making way more because you had less overheads.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because one thing with which I've found with starting business is, despite the free stuff that you were giving away, once you educate, you get trust, and once you get trust, you get a customer for life, and people that will always speak highly of you because you've helped educate them in ways that they would never been able to do that before.
Yeah.
But talking about the 4Ps, it was when I first met you, that was what you were kind of preaching to me, and you're obviously preaching it to this day. Like, where did the 4Ps come from?
At some point as an entrepreneur, you have to typically, as a solo entrepreneur, which I was maybe 15 years ago, you obviously are in charge of everything, right? You're the CEO, the COO, the CFO, the bin man, everything. So I'm putting together my own website.
Does that make Vic the coffee boy?
No, not at all. He's actually more of those things, and I'm effectively a glorified salesperson. But when you're reflecting on your content and the work you've done, you're writing down, okay, I've done this over here, I've done this over here. A lot of stuff that we've not even got into on today's episode. And I was like, hang on a second. There's been a similar approach to all of these. I've been involved in planning it. After we plan it, we produce it. After we produce it, we publish it. And after we publish it, we promote it. So the 4Ps of content is a universal framework for producing content, not just digital social media content, but even if you think about putting together like a VaynerWorld, you have to plan it, then you have to produce the event, then you have to publish the event, publishing it as in, even if you're just publishing it live to a studio or live to a conference center, then you have to then promote it online. Once it's gone online, you also have to promote it a little bit as you're putting it together. So these 4Ps are the critical, fundamental, consistent elements of every single aspect of putting together a content program. And because I've been able to distill it down to that, I feel like it's now our obligation to teach that to as many people as possible. And you've seen this with the 70 plus episodes you've gone. If you ask somebody why they're doing what they're doing, and you ask them why a second time and a third time and a fourth time and a fifth time, typically the reason why someone's doing what they're doing is because they want to get that message or be the guardian angel that they once needed. Often when they're teenagers or in their 20s or in some cases even younger, they're trying to do an intervention on their younger self, and they're looking for versions of their younger self to do that intervention on. Hey, be careful what you eat. Hey, be careful how much you drink. Hey, try and get to the gym. Hey, try and be kind to your kids even though your mom wasn't kind to you. They're trying to break those cycles, those generational cycles. So it's like, for me, I would say that I've probably made the 4Ps for 18-year-old Raj. Now, I'm not trying to, I used to be the kind of dude, and there's a lot of young dudes that credit me as their older brother, as the guy who put them in the game, and they're killing it now. But I think I probably recognized in them when they were 17, 18 years old, and I can see them with this huge orb of talent around them, and they're about to waste it or even invest 10 years of it in the wrong direction, saying, hey, dude, why don't you look at shit like this? Because if somebody had given me this game at 18 years old or 21 or 24, then, it would have accelerated my progress.
Yeah.
Not to say that people didn't give me game at that age. The people that I did, the hustlers, the people that I worked with, they gave me a lot of game, but you've also got to pass it on. To your point earlier on, right? You were like, I was going to stop. But the moment you stop the option of passing it on to the next Danny who's going to start his podcast, which means you rob him or her of their first 70 episode journey. And when you think about it from that point of view, you're like, well, just continuing is an act of generosity when it comes to making content. Just not stopping. Your progress is almost a byproduct because you're also making progress by the amount of people you inspire. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. It's crazy. The amount you don't realize when you create a podcast or even content, like, okay, you get likes, but you don't realize who's looking at it. But like now, I'm not even joking, because all my contact details are online. Like, you can find me, you can email me, whatever. Like, so many people email me now, WhatsApp me, like, hey, like, I really want to start a podcast. I love the content you're putting out. Like, I just need to know how to start. And I was that person once upon a time.
With Spencer, right?
Yeah, with Spencer.
One of our most successful clients, like a legend in this city at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, it's a struggle to really see somebody that's actually like had more impact than him. And still each week does the same thing again and again and again, flies all over the world. And I think that would be for me, like, my next goal is like fly internationally and start. I've got some podcasts booked in London when I'm there in a couple of weeks.
Congratulations.
So but yeah, it's like you say, it's and going back to that point is, I think with the discovery of the podcast is I actually discovered what I like to do in life, and I always felt like with closing big deals and making money and stuff like that, you think that's what you want. But it's like, well, when you get it, you're like, well, it doesn't give me much satisfaction. But when I help somebody else, that gives me like all the fulfillment that I basically need.
Yeah. Nothing compares, bro. Nothing compares. Like my friends, your friends V1 versus V16, like event 16. It's radically different, because now, at first it was like an event and it was hardcore. It was making it happen, trying to get people to galvanize around the concept. Now, for me, honestly, part of it is a bit of a love fest.
Yeah.
Like it's just walking in there and just like hugs, kisses, selfies. Like it's a vibe, you know?
Yeah, it's just great to meet people. But one question I have for you is, everything you do is around helping people, whether it's content, whether it's connecting, whatever it is, it's always helping someone. And I suppose when you're in a service-based industry, that's what you kind of do. You're there to help people. But what is it like? What is it within you that wants to help people so much? Like, why? What was the turning point in your life that was like, okay, my life's goal is going to be to help people?
I don't know if that is my life's goal. I think look, here's the thing, right? I'm like a lucky motherfucker. Like I'm of that superhero like creed of people that is only gonna win. There's no two ways about it. So I constantly walk around with a barrel full of apples, right? And I can't give enough of them away. As I walk down the street, they fall out of the barrel. Now, what am I gonna do if other people pick them up and eat them? Am I gonna put the barrel down and grab them off and put them off and keep bouncing? I have so many contacts. I pull out my phone right now over there, 7,000+ contacts, from some of the dudes and girls that you mentioned right through to people that are like week 2 in their journey in content, who I've just reached out to and be like, yo man, I see you got 11 likes, keep going. Your man, Joe Woodhouse, when he was starting off with Spencer in the early days, he was a big lad. He hadn't figured out his formats. I hit him then. I was like, bro, you got it. Why? Because I've got that future gazing synthesis, right? Where I can tell someone's going to kill it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it costs me nothing to help people. Like I get all the credit for helping people and it costs me nothing. Just to be like, WhatsApp, yo, dude, you're going to be here. She's going to be here. Make sure you guys have a chat about this. Then I exit the WhatsApp group. It costs me nothing. I get all the credit for it, man. And probably we're at the stage right now, and this has happened recently, where I'm like, on my journey, I'll say to Vic or something, I'll be like, yo, man, we should probably just do this here, like fix this little deal up. And now we're at the stage where like my time is so tight that it's like, if you open that can of worms or you start that relationship, they're going to want you to handhold them for the first 2-3 weeks, and you can't afford to do that. Yeah. So I appreciate it, because I take what you said as a compliment, but I wouldn't say it's my life's mission more than it is just my operating system. I am in the business of friendship. I'm benefiting from friendships. And I also feel like most people don't realize what the value of a good network is. Like you can say your network is your net worth and all that fucking Instagram meme shit, but like the reality is like, it's just a state of being. Like the amount of confidence that my contact base gives me is insane. I see people go, oh, Raj, I got this problem. Da, da. I'm like, that's not a problem. Tell me what it is. I'll call, blah, 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 da, 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 done. It's like you then become like a solution provider for people. People associate you with providing solutions in their lives, or being a guiding force or wise or anything like that, a counselor. And then that then creates this reverse tsunami back to you, because I don't spend any money on marketing.
Yeah.
None at all.
Because people just talk about you.
Bro, I know how much you paid for today's studio. I'm very conscious of it. This is the highest act of generosity. For a random conversation 4 years ago, talking about the 4 Ps, then we see each other in Tom and Sergio. How are you? How's your leg? How's the family? Blah, blah. The compound effect and how this is going to play out, plus the fact that now you are a skilled swordsman when it comes to podcasting, means that this clip is going to lead to something. So it's like, it's just this ongoing like fluid thing. If you remember nothing else from today, is go back to what you said at the beginning. When you were thinking about quitting and you were like, oh, I'm not going to quit. What you did is you just, instead of building a dam, you just let it flow. It's not yours to build up this good luck, this fortune, this skill that you have. It's meant to pass through you, through to the next person, the same way it passed through Spencer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you can't really stop. What am I going to do in my contacts if I get hit by a train tomorrow? You know what I mean? there's hundreds of millions of dollars of value in that phone. Just by connecting, even if I don't tap into that value, just by connecting people to each other.
So I'm gonna hit you up for my next podcast. Yes.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I didn't want to blow up your spot because we're live, right? But you were like, I'm going to London. I'm like, all right, well, listen, I've got a bunch of dudes and girls you could interview in London that are like killers, like not real killers, as in like business killers, that the zone that you're in. Do you know what I mean?
Knife crime's a big thing in London.
Not those. I don't know any of those people, but like, if I can, me, bro. Like, there's never been a time where your name's come up on my phone and I've not hit you back straight away. Like, there's anything I can do for you, it just goes without saying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. One thing before we end the podcast is you obviously you mentioned a second ago is you've worked with some guys and took them to the next level, and they're killers in the game now.
Yeah.
Why didn't you want to be that?
Dude. So that's a great question. The place that I found myself in.
I mean, you are in every right of the word. You are that status, but like, you're talking about these guys that are like, I mean, they wouldn't be able to walk down the street on their own because they're so famous. But like,
yeah, but I didn't do that. I didn't do that for Gary or Russell. These were like locomotive trains that were they weren't going as fast as they're going now, right? You
could have took yourself on. You could have put yourself in that struggle.
Well, that's the question, right? Why not? Why did I not see their train, build my own, and go at the same speed? It's really, I'll keep it 1,000 with you. I saw how much money I was making as a producer and consultant and advisor. And I was like, okay, let me take some of this cash and let me go buy a nice house and a few other bits and pieces that generationally wasn't commonplace for my parents, their parents, their parents, and their parents before them. So I wanted to get to a situation where I'm like, listen, what they say, like, make hay whilst the sun shines. Now, what happens is I get behind companies like, golfonline.co.uk or all these other companies, Carrier Bag Shop, and I start doing wild stuff for them, like changing the culture. Like right now, there's a big retailer in the UK that over the last 2 Christmas seasons has made a big deal of the fact that you can take their carrier bags, cut them with scissors, and then use them as wrapping paper because sustainability is a big thing. I invented that like 15 years ago, 10 years ago. So it's like I got so comfortable being able to project my magic through these larger organizations and see them scale that I really kind of nested in where I am. VaynerWorld would not happen without the Carrier Bag Shop, Sujin Shah, my partner in those businesses. Some of the content that I've made in the Arabian Hotel Investment Conference wouldn't happen without Bench Events and the machine that is that portfolio of conferences. So for me, I was like, I could build my own thing, or I could just launch multiple things through the machine that is my client and then still benefit from the upside of it. Like, some of my clients are brilliant, bro. Like, you look at Tahir Majithia, he's doing millions of dollars of Dubai real estate through the Dubai Real Estate Podcast. We created that for him. You look at Spencer Lodge, that guy's in a position. I mean, he does good stuff. We all know about the stuff that he does on camera and the stuff that he posts. That doesn't even compare to what he does behind the scenes. There are like dozens and dozens of like orphans and people like that he like straight up like hooks up in this city with like education experiences and did like, who else? You look at someone like Nimi Mehta, we played a small part in her journey, like helping her get her podcast off the ground. She's like a killer now, like doing all the big events like, Facebook and MasterCard. And like, we as an agency are privileged to spend a moment in time in a relationship with our clients to help them a little bit along the way to see where they go next. It's incredible. Yeah. And I think I've really enjoyed that. Now, on the flip side, when the tide is changing a little bit. This is my 25th year in the game. I started September 98. September this year is 25. It's a quarter century. Yeah. Now we're going through that kind of what I call like the Neo phase. Not Neo in Matrix, but Neo, the R&B star. He wrote songs for a lot of people before he came out with Sexy Love. Yeah. I think right now it's time for me to start releasing quote unquote my own records, which is the reason why, having produced many podcasts in the past, even Raj Kotecha ones, I've now kind of stuck more to Algo, which I jokingly say is the #1 podcast in Dubai, but the reality is there's brilliant podcasts in Dubai across the board. But now I'm coming out and doing my own hits. And the way I'm doing it is in a hip hop sense. If you look at the way I'm doing it, this podcast is the equivalent of when a rapper launches their album and then they go and do promo at the Breakfast Club in New York, and they go to Hot 97 and they go to Big Boy in LA and they do freestyles. This is what I'm doing now. This is maybe the 9th or 10th interview podcast that I'm doing. And I'm like, yo, I got bars too. Like, you might not even know that I actually ghost wrote some of your favorite records. Like, I ghost produced some of your favorite podcasts. And now it's time for me to spit it. And the only people that really know about the way that I do it are people like you, because we see each other in the real world, because we move in similar circles. And you're like, yeah, that cat Raj is he knows what he's doing. He's about it. Do you know what I mean? And now, thanks to your generosity in our relationship, which is compounded over time, I can come on your platform and say, yo, you're going to hear some of the craziest stuff that you've ever heard in your life. Because some of the stuff that I've said on here, I've never said on anybody else's podcast. And I want you to then benefit from me putting those clips out at my own cost and tagging you and being like, yo, I gave my man this exclusive. Do you know what I mean? When you see a guy go to like Shorty Blitz and MK on Kiss 100 and spit the craziest freestyle, that will always have happened on Kiss 100 on Shorty Blitz and MK's show. So I want to do that now for the people that have rocked with me and given me like infinite faith and confidence and support. Guys like yourself. Do you know what I mean? If you would say to me, okay, yeah, boom, before I go to New York in 2 weeks' time, do you want to do another one? I'm like, yeah, I got you, let's go.
On that topic, actually, when we met my friend, your friend, you were like, I've saved an exclusive for you.
Yeah.
What is that exclusive?
Man, we've been getting some insane... We've had the best people in the world work on our new business and advise on our new business. Spencer Lodge is one of them. We've taken his advice very seriously. Another one is Jack Hopkins from the Online Course Guys show. Another one is Daniel Priestley from Key Person of Influence. These are Godzilla level people in their industry when it comes to what they know about. What we've now found ourselves in a situation doing is we've got a couple of things. I'll give you 2 exclusives. How about that? 2 for 1. You never
Absolutely.
You never got a better deal from an Indian shopkeeper than that, right? It's 2 for 1, right? Number 1, we have this platform that we're launching called contentstrategy.ai. To me, AI, Google Bard, OpenAI, ChatGPT, and all of the other things coming from that Avenger list of AI tools is the biggest thing to happen to content creation since this. The biggest paradigm shift. So with that being said, and by the way, for those listening audio only, I just snatched Danny's phone. It's the biggest thing to happen since then. So what we want to do is, being that we are responsible for educating people and doing learning and development programs for large organizations around content strategy, we are now going to be launching a measurable content strategy program that openly from the beginning leans into the fact that AI is either going to destroy you if you lay down, or it's going to raise you if you can get with it. So contentstrategy.ai will do loads of learning, tons more free learning than tons more learning than we've ever been able to scale before because of the platforms that we're investing in. Measurements before, during, and after to show your progress so you can show your organization. And then the next thing we're launching is something called My Friends, Your Friends Pro, which the name is kind of gives it away, is that My Friends, Your Friends over the last 6 years and 16 events has done a really good job on its original mission, which is to help people form meaningful connections. But during that time, there was a byproduct event, which is that entrepreneurs and business owners found each other as a cohort within the larger 4,000 network people of My Friends, Your Friends.
Yeah.
And they've started saying to us, hey, listen, we love it. We love the open format, the fluidity of My Friends, Your Friends. But could we do something which is more focused around building relationships, but not doing it in a paint by numbers networking event that you get across to buy, right? You give me this contact, I'll give you this contact. You got to be at this time in the morning. You got to do the...
It's almost like a platform you can connect with each other's interests.
Yeah. Imagine and we've been doing this on the low. I've never said this, but Vic and I do little breakout sessions for 10 to 15 to 20 entrepreneurs, all killers, big time folks. And we just jam and we network and we say, right, I know you've got some information about this. Why don't you let the room know about that? And it's Chatham House rules, so nothing ever leaves the room. The people in the room are all fucking A1. And now we're like, okay, well, how do we take some of that energy? How do we take some of My Friends, Your Friends energy? And how do we give people like a professional platform where they can come along and be like, hey, listen, here's a couple of blind spots I've got when it comes to the upcoming corporation tax in the UAE. How can I get some more visibility over that? Here's some blind spots I've got when it comes to repatriation, or my company's just blown up and we've got funding and we're hiring at scale. What software do I use? Or how do I put health insurance in place for these people? So that's what My Friends, Your Friends Pro is going to be about, the people that openly want to have some more professional guidance.
It's incredible.
Yeah, man.
Raj, I could do this forever, mate, but I think we should save it for a part 2.
Yeah, we should.
So
episode 100. Now you should get someone. You should get a big time killer for episode 100. But
nah,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's amazing. I always knew how this conversation would go, and I've actually just really randomly just had like weird. What do they call it when you're in that moment? You feel like you've been here before.
So it's not called a flashback. Deja vu.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, deja vu. I just had this really weird moment of deja vu. Like I've been in this moment, or it's happened before. Weird, but no, I always knew that this was going to be so good. I mean, like I said, just sitting here, if you can see my face on camera, go watch back and look at my face. I'm just sitting there, just like so calm and just taking everything in that you got to say. And I'm so glad that we've recorded this, and I'm going to be able to listen back to this forever and ever and ever, and so can the audience as well. So I really appreciate those comments of go ride your bike for a little while, son, and once the stabilizers are off, we'll give it a bash.
Yeah.
Because we're here now, and it's it's been an incredible journey, and I want to it's just incredible how these happen, like how I would see Spencer's. In fact, maybe this was you. So how I actually found out about Spencer was he was creating content around sales courses and doing one-to-one coaching. Was that your idea?
No.
Okay, because
he had Make It Happen University before us.
So Make It Happen University. So that's where I saw it. Spoke to him, and then my employer at the time was like, I don't see value in him, but I was like, I see value. This guy's a killer.
Yeah.
He's a self-made multi-millionaire. He's gonna have some good stuff to say. So I paid for it all myself.
Yeah.
And then that's where I met you.
Yeah, I think that might have been post us working with Spencer. We came in as a rough timeline around the beginning of the Spencer Lodge podcast. That's probably the first thing that we launched with him. It was his birthday the day I texted him, and I texted him the picture of when he has a notepad and paper and he's writing the intro to the Spencer Lodge podcast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
He's a G. I love him.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, every episode, I mean, it just gets better and better and better. So if you love that, or you think that somebody's going to take benefit from this, please share it with them. You can give us a 5-star rating on Spotify now. You can give me a 4-star rating if you want. I don't mind. Just give me some sort of star rating. However much you decided that you like the conversation and you like what we're doing here. Because if you do that, this helps get the podcast out there to more people. So without that, then, as Raj says, I don't like to talk about it, but it does cost a lot now to put on these podcasts every week. A lot of money, and I don't have sponsorship yet. So it's something we're working towards, and it's just because this is kind of like my hobby. It's my passion. Like I feel like I've got a purpose in life, and my purpose in life is to find my younger self, as Raj said, and distribute this message to them that, somebody that has got a criminal record, somebody that doesn't have any grades at school, somebody that does come from a broken home can actually go on and do something special with their life. So you can do it. And thank you very much for tuning in again. And we'll see you next week.